Hi, I'm Stefan from Extreme Media, and in this how-to video I would like to give you a deeper insight into OneGUI, our monitoring application for the media industry. So this very moment I logged on already to the operator's screen for OneGUI. In the first half of this video we will look on this again, and then in the second half of the video we will look into the administrator side. So let's start from top to down. So at the very top of the OneGUI operation user interface, you can see a menu, and this gives you access to various tools. I will come back to this in a moment. And right below, there's a status bar that shows you all the jobs that are running, that are queued, so waiting, that are done, that failed, and that they are currently paused across all the connected tools. So if you have connected not only one transcoding farm, but multiple, you see an aggregated status at this place. If you have connected ingest and transcoding and quality control, you will see an aggregated status at that place. And below, there is the list of jobs as they are running. And again, it is a little bit like a FIFO, first in, first out. So it is shown in the order as the jobs are being entered into the operating systems. So into the transcoders, the ingest tools, file transport tools, workflow tools, whatsoever. And in this order, they are displayed here. So that means it can happen that they're kind of like interleaved in between various systems. So often very useful as a very first action. So if your task this very moment is to look after transcoding, let's say with Capella FTC, you do not want to see all the quality control jobs that have been running, for instance, with Venera Pulsar. So you select by a system. And to be more precise, if you have multiple Capella transcoding farms or multiple Telestream transcoding farms, you will see them all individually. So here in our lab, we have connected one of each, and for that reason, we see every label, every brand just once. But you can filter down by system. So you might have an ingest system and an outgest system, the same product. Let's say in both cases, Telestream Vantage, you can see the individual operations, the ingest and the outgest operations individually. So then another important filter is to see what, for instance, was going wrong. So when you are focused on to provide best service to your customers, to your internal colleagues or your external customers, you want to look after everything what goes wrong. So you want to see the fatal jobs. And I've did that just now. And that allows me, for instance, there's one job that ran a little bit like 36%, and then it failed. And by highlighting it, it is populated here on the right-hand side. I can see that this was a job where it was configured first a transcode to happen and afterwards an upload to happen. But this job has failed already in transcoding, so the upload was not even tried. And now here below, I can see where it was coming from. So the source file name, the target file name, and in this case also the real-time speed. So that looked all not bad. For troubleshooting, that gives me a first information. Now I would need to log on to the individual product. So in this case, the Capella FTC transcoder to find out more details about this particular job. For some systems, we do have an error bar, as we have it here on the very bottom. And when an error occurs, then this error bar comes up. And when we receive a good error message from that system, it is shown here as well, as like a warning message. There is also the progress that is displayed here. We have other filters. There's a filter by dates, the created dates, the started dates, and the end dates. Most popular are the ones to check for like a created date, because this is the point in time where the job was entered into your system. So I see there is, this one here, for instance, was from the 5th of March 2026. So let me try to create such a filter. So we can say we filter from the 4th to the 6th. So I'm a little bit lazy now, and that shows us just this subset of jobs in that list. Same happens with the other types of filters. And then, as you can see, some of the jobs have been started with priority 6, so fairly high, and one was on the priority number 1. So if I interested only in certain priorities, that helps me as well. Now, why is that of interest? Beside the file name, what often goes along with the job name and what often is the same like the name in the watch folder or the watch folder's name, the priority is often also criteria for filtering in business processes. Yeah, I think that's quite clear what is possible here on the front end. Here at the bottom end we have a pagination, so it's obviously if you have more jobs that fit into such a page, then we start to create more pages. So for that I need to lift away all the filters, and I think at last but not least the timing filter, and then we'll see that we now have 2 pages, and this can become like tens of pages or even hundreds. The length of that page list is configurable. As I said, there's applications. The typical, most often used application is the file queuer. We have different file queuers. In this case, there's a kind of a wizard type of file queuer built in here. What it does, it is allows us to browse, remote browse from the browser here for files on the server side. So I've selected this one, and then it has this kind of wizard as said, where we select a profile next. So, and then finally we define where it should be delivered to. So the output folder, output file name, and with finish we start the job. So we start the preparation, then we send it off the job to the processing engine. So this is not a workflow orchestrator, but it is a tool that helps to manually queue jobs into a processing engine. Good, yeah, successfully, and now we should see a new job that was kicked off. Anyhow, as I promised you, we want to look in this video also onto the administrators page, and the most important configurations happen here. You need to log on to the system. So it means every operator or group of operators have a password, and I'm currently logged on as administrator, so I'm part of the group of administrators, so the admins, and there's no special filter set for me. Now, what does that mean with the filtering? We can have, so by the way, the demo user is part of the group of users and also no filter, but we have one user that's called Michael. He is also a user, but he has filters set. And with the filtering, we try to limit the view for a certain operator to a subset of jobs. In this particular case, it does a regular expression on the job name, and it watches for watch A star. Means for all the jobs that have a job name that starts with watch A, and this is associated typically to a watch folder, and this watch folder's name, and that allows us to present only the jobs that are related to this business process, watch A. Then, as mentioned, we have groups, and the most important is that a role of a certain operator is bound to its group association, and with the group we have various rights. So here we see a longer list of rights, and what that means, if we have a closer look, it says the role view something, the role to be a user, the role to execute this and that action. So practically speaking, here in the front end, what is kind of like divided in these various fields, we made the visibility of every field dependent on a role. So if someone has not set the role to watch the task list and the task properties, the whole right-hand side is hidden for him. It looks like this. If someone has is disabled to see, for instance, the failed jobs, he can only see successful processings. So often you want to do that when the system is exposed to your customers and you don't want your customers to have all the details about what goes wrong. And that's very easily done by creating a role where we, for instance, remove certain rights. So for instance, the rights to see the task properties and to see the task itself. And here on the top, these are the actions. So by the way, we have not spoken about the actions before earlier. So on the right mouse click, you can operate every job. So by default, you have the ability to change the priority. And this priority list is dependent on the target system. So Capella offers also an urgent priority. And for that reason, it shows up here. We can requeue jobs. We can resume them when they run into a failure. We can pause them. So first we pause them, then resume them. We can abort them, and we can delete them from the list. So these are the typical operations that you can see in all the processing type of applications. And whether this functionality shows up for a certain operator or for a group of operators, by the way, this is the job that is now being reprocessed. We see it here with the thumbnail as it is about to be processed, and it has not yet ended, so there's no end date. But back to the configuration. So when you delete one of those items, here just so you create a new role and you delete this right, then this operator cannot access this action on the front end. He cannot access this particular view on the front end. And that allows us, more or less to hide everything beside the basic job list. Settings. In the settings, that's an important one. On one hand, there's a license that you need to apply that is done by a license file and that has a certain location, as we can see here. There's time zone offsets and the ports and things like that. But more important for us this very moment are the various systems. So I told you that this moment we see jobs from Capella. And the way how that is done is you can create systems, so we can have more of those. And then the systems need connection parameters. So here in the first one, this has already happened. So this is in our lab on the IP address 10.150. Capella can have a full redundant setup, so then we can have redundant connections. And we have certain root directories where we store the profiles, where we store the storage locations and so on. Why do we need that? That is for the file queuer, so they have certain settings, and here more in the middle, these are the settings for the monitoring. And that's very similar with all the other systems. So that's a little bit older view, but at the end of the day, it's always that the system has a name, it has a URL to the API, and it has log-on credentials to the API. We have the same with mock technologies, and we have it with Telestream Vantage, but all very self-explaining because these are the basic parameters. As said, with that name, they are then shown up here in our systems list, so you have full control how you want to name them. Last but not least, there's a Woody Intuit system here connected as well, and again, the name and the API parameters. So last but not least, there are two things to point out. There is a database cleanup and a database reset. Be careful with the database reset. It does what it's named to, so you reset it and everything is deleted. So it's like factory defaults. And the database cleanup, that is very useful because that helps you to remove old jobs from that list. So I will not do this very moment because then my demo data is gone. But at the end of the day, the idea is that you can say for everything what is older than the last, let's say, 90 days, clean it up. This is important for some of our customers because they have 10,000 or more than 10,000 jobs a month. And obviously after half a year, the database is that big that it slows down operations and it's useful to delete older jobs. If your operation runs with 10,000 or 20,000 jobs in 3 years, there's no need to clean up at all. So this was the administration backend. We have spoken about the operator's front end. That was my how-to video on Extreme Media's OneGUI. Thank you so much for watching.